Hi, and thank you for tuning in to Gavin Lon Digital. I'm Gavin Lon. In this video, I'll introduce you to an exciting new course entitled Let's Build an ASP.NET Core MVC Web Application on .NET 5. As the title suggests, the videos that will be released as part of this course will demonstrate the step-by-step creation of a real-world ASP.NET Core MVC web application built on .NET 5. The following technologies will be discussed and demonstrated in the context of a real-world ASP.NET Core MVC web application. C#, .NET 5, the MVC, Model View Controller Framework, Entity Framework Core, Link, SQL Server 2019, ASP.NET Core Identity, JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax, HTML5, Razor, Bootstrap version 4, CSS, responsive web design, and Azure Cloud. We'll also look at UX, user experience, related topics, which includes responsive web design. For content like this and much more, please consider subscribing, and please ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. If you like this video at any point, please give it a thumbs up. It will be greatly appreciated. This particular video will not be technical in nature and will provide an overview of the ASP.NET Core MVC web application that we are going to create in this course. I've already developed a prototype for this application, and this video will be a demonstration of this prototype web application to give you a good idea of what we are going to develop during this course. So, firstly, let's give this web application a real-world context. Let's look at the requirement we have been given to build this web application. I've created a fictional company that I've named TechTree. TechTree are a UK-based company that provides software engineering-related courses in various technologies. TechTree have several campuses located around the UK, and a learner can study with TechTree at any of their campuses, but a learner can also study remotely through their website. TechTree have hired us to write a web-based application where members of the public can register with the application and consume video and text-based content that is regularly published through the application by administration staff at TechTree. For TechTree, this web application is a great marketing tool for reaching members of the public and also provides an online remote learning facility to its members. So, as discussed, I have already developed a prototype for this application, and we can use this prototype as a template to guide us through building the production version of this application that we'll create over the duration of this course. So, let me give you a brief demonstration of the prototype web application that I have created for TechTree. Note that although I've developed the prototype on my Mac using SQLite for the database, we'll create the production version of this application on a Windows 10 platform using SQL Server 2019 for the application's database. With the exception of a few minor configuration considerations, you can follow along with this course using a Mac and SQLite, even though we'll create the production version of the application on a Windows 10 platform using SQL Server 2019. All technologies used for creating the application can be downloaded and installed for free. I'll give details of how to do this in the next video. So here's the code for the prototype I've developed. Let's look at some of its features. So when we fire up the application through Visual Studio, we are first presented with the home page for this application. So all members of the public have access to this part of the web application. The top section contains what is known as a hero image. For those of you not familiar with the term hero image, this definition seems to sum up what a hero image is. A hero image is a website design term used to describe an oversized banner image at the top of a website. Sometimes called a hero header, it serves as a user's first glimpse of your company and offering because of its prominent placement towards the top of a web page that usually extends full length. This image and the text presented in the center of the image lets the user know immediately what the TechTree company is all about. The user also becomes aware that a user is able to click this button and register with the application. We'll discuss registration and membership in a bit. So this is a typical minimalist modern design for a web page. You can see we have our menu items at the top. These menu items provide links to the appropriate sections of the page. By clicking the Courses and Articles link, we are navigated to a section of the web page where we can see what content is available in terms of courses and articles provided by TechTree. When we click the Contact Us menu item, we are presented with a section of the web page where a facility for the user to email TechTree with any inquiries or questions is provided. When the user clicks the About Us menu option, the user is presented with the About Us section, which simply contains a blurb about the company, TechTree. Then at the bottom, you can see a simple footer containing links to relevant social media URLs. So you can see icons that represent Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and YouTube. So let's look at the various ways that the user can access the registration dialog box, which obviously provides a user with a facility to register with the application. We have a register button in the center of the Hero section here. We can also access the register dialog from this top right-hand menu option. And when the user clicks one of the cards presented in the Courses and Articles section, the user is also presented with the register dialog. Although TechTree provides its content for free through this web application, the user needs to register the user's relevant information with the application in order to consume TechTree's free content. Something slightly different happens when a user registers by clicking one of the cards. We'll discuss what happens when the user registers by clicking one of the cards presented in this section of the homepage a bit later. So in terms of security regarding this web application, there are 3 levels of security. A user can be a member of the public, in which case the user will only have access to the content on the home page. A user can register through the registration dialog, and a registered user is regarded as a member of the web application and will be able to consume the free content in the form of courses and articles provided by TechTree. The third level of security is an administrator. The administrator works directly for TechTree and can update the content provided through the web application. During this course, we'll create the necessary CRUD, Create, Read, Update, Delete functionality that the administrator will use to add or remove content and metadata from the system. You'll see how the MVC design pattern is implemented and separates concerns, i.e. models, views, and controllers. I have already created an admin account. So let's log on to the application as an administrator. From a technical perspective, how is an admin user different from any other user of the application? I have created an admin role in the relevant database table, provided through the ASP.NET Core Identity technology. We'll discuss how security is facilitated through the implementation of a technology called Identity later on at an appropriate time during this course. Don't worry if at points in this overview video you are presented with terminology with which you are unfamiliar. This is a step-by-step course, and such terminologies will be explained in detail at appropriate points during this course. Very basically, I've created an admin role and added the relevant admin account to the admin role. And on a technical level, this is implemented by adding relevant data to the relevant identity database tables. But as discussed, I will clarify the technical aspects involved here at an appropriate time during this course. We are now logged into the application as an administrator. Notice the welcome message next to the logout button. Notice how the menu at the top has changed since we logged in with the admin account. We now have 3 menu options available to us. Home on the left, we have the logout menu option on the right. We also have a new drop-down menu labeled Admin, which has appeared next to the Home menu option. If we click the Admin menu option, we are presented with a drop-down list of sub-menu options. So let's start by clicking on the first item in the drop-down list marked Categories. So here we are presented with a list of categories that have been added to the system and are stored in the relevant database table. You may recognize the text in the list under the title and description headings. This data was presented on the appropriate cards in the Courses and Articles section of the publicly available home page. Each category corresponds to one of the cards presented in the Courses and Articles section on the home page. So in this application, note that we are generically referring to a group of content items as category. Each category contains a list of category items. In the context of the relational database design for this application, the category table, used for storing categories, has a one-to-many relationship with the category item table, used to store category items. The category item table is used for the storage of metadata regarding each item of content, which are contained within a particular category. The content itself is stored in its own database table, appropriately named content. The content item table is used to store data about its corresponding content, i.e., the metadata for a particular item of content, and has a one-to-one relationship with the content table. So here we have a list of categories. We'll discuss this application's relational database design in detail at an appropriate point during this course presentation. You can see that the data for each category in the list has a group of buttons positioned to the right of the category data. The first button from the left allows us to edit the data for the relevant category. So if we click on this button, you can see that we are able to edit the data for an existing category. We can click the Save button to save any modifications we have made to the category data, or we can click the Back to List button to navigate back to the list of categories. By clicking the second button from the left, we are presented with a read-only display of the relevant category's data. By clicking the third button from the left, we are presented with a page presenting us with a read-only view of the relevant category's data, but we are also presented with a prompt asking us if we are sure that we want to delete the relevant item. We have a red delete button on this page that we can press to confirm the relevant deletion operation. So these buttons and associated views provide the user with an interface to facilitate relevant CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete operations for our category data. We'll look at how to implement these CRUD operations in code during this course and how the MVC framework facilitates a separation of concerns. So here we have a button marked Update Items. If we click one of these buttons, we will be presented with a list of category items related to the relevant category. The items presented in this list are members of the category that we selected from our list of categories by clicking the relevant Update Items button. So as stated, a category has a one-to-many relationship with category items. So let's go back to the category list by clicking the appropriate Admin submenu option. Before we look at adding new categories to the system, let's remove the currently saved categories from the system. Let's delete each category from the system by pressing the trash icon positioned next to each relevant category represented in the list, and then confirming our intention to delete the item by pressing the Delete button. Note that when we delete a category, all its related category items and associated content are automatically deleted. I've intentionally configured the relevant database tables with foreign key constraints so that this cascading deletion effect occurs. I'll demonstrate how to implement this on a technical level through generating and running Entity Framework core data migrations at an appropriate time during this course. So let's continue deleting the other category items until the list of categories is empty. We are currently logged into the application as an administrator. Let's log out of the application, and once we have logged out, we are presented with the publicly available home page. And now if we navigate to the Courses and Articles section, you can see that the cards that were presented to us before are no longer available. This is because each of these cards represented a category, and when we were logged in to the application as an administrator, we deleted all the categories and related content from the system. Let's log in with the administrator account again so that we can go through the process of adding categories, category items, and related content to the system. Let's navigate to our list of categories by clicking the Admin menu's category submenu item. Let's create a new category. So, in order to be presented with the appropriate view, let's click the Create New button. We can now add the data for the category we wish to create. So, in the title field, let's type C# for Beginners. As you might have guessed, we are creating a C# for Beginners course as this category. Let's add an appropriate description, and let's keep this description simple. Now here we have a field labeled Thumbnail URL. This field requires a path to an image. So I will provide the relevant thumbnail images via GitHub that we can use while going through this course. So you would have seen these images displayed in the cards in the Courses and Articles section of the publicly available homepage. So all images used in this course will be made available on GitHub at an appropriate time. So in this field, we can provide a relative path to the thumbnail image that represents the C# for Beginners course. Right, let's save our data to the database by clicking the button labeled Create. And as you can see, our C# for Beginners course now appears as an item in our list of categories. So to add a category item to our C# for Beginners category, we can click the Update Items button. We are now presented with a list of category items related to the relevant category. At the moment, this list is empty because, of course, we have not yet added any items to the C# for Beginners course category. So let's add a category item to the C# for Beginners category, and let's give the category item the title Introduction to C#. Let's add an appropriate description. We can then select the media type. If the content type for this category item is purely text-based, we must select the item from the media type drop-down list with the text article. However, the content for this category item will contain a video, so let's select the item from the drop-down list with the text video. And the last field is a date field. For this field, we can simply select a date that represents the release date of the relevant content. So I've used this date picker widget to provide the user with an easy way to input a date for this field. I'll show you how we are able to implement this date picker functionality from a technical perspective later in this course. I have used a jQuery UI widget to facilitate this date picker functionality. You can see the date has defaulted to today's date, i.e. the date when this video was recorded. Let's select the next day as the release date for this item. Then let's click the appropriate button to add this category item to the system. The application saves the category item to the system, and we are navigated back to the list of category items. Great! We can now see the category item we have just created in the category item list. Let's add a category item with the title of C# data types. The content for this category item will contain a video, so we must select the video item from the drop-down list for the media type field. Let's add a text-based category item which will contain content for a code example demonstrating the basic C# data types. So for this category item, it is appropriate to choose article for its media type field. Let's add one more category item and let's give it the title of C# variables. The content for this item contains a video, so let's select video from the media type drop-down list. Let's include a release date. Great, so we have added 4 category items to the C# for Beginners category. At the moment, we have only added metadata for the relevant category items. We haven't yet added content for any of these category items. Note that a category will not be available to the public or members unless it contains at least one category item that is updated with content. So, as discussed earlier, the content table in the database has a one-to-one relationship with the category item table. The category table has a one-to-many relationship with the category item table. Let's add content to each of the relevant category items. So we are able to navigate to the appropriate content view for a category item by clicking this button positioned to the right-hand side of the relevant category item in the category items list. So if we click the button labeled Add Content next to the category item that has the title Introduction to C#, we are presented with a view where we are able to add the content for the Introduction to C# category item. So firstly, let's provide an appropriate title in the title field. So let's type in Introduction to C#. This text will appear as the heading for this content item. Below this, we have a text area field, i.e. a field where we are able to provide more than one line of text for the appropriate field. This field is labeled HTML content. So here we are able to enter HTML markup. This is obviously a very unsophisticated HTML editor. In fact, it's not an HTML editor at all. But we are able to use this field to save HTML markup content to the database. To ensure that the HTML code inputted into this field is well formed and will be rendered to the user in the user's browser in a desirable way, we can use a free code editor like Visual Studio Code to create and test the HTML content. When we are happy with the HTML content, we can paste the content into the appropriate text area field. This is obviously very basic HTML, but using Visual Studio Code, we can make our HTML as complicated as it needs to be and verify that the HTML is well formed and will be rendered to the user's browser in a desirable way. We can use the Live Survey extension to display the results of our HTML in our browsers from within Visual Studio Code, like this. I've included a link regarding the Live Survey extension for Visual Studio Code below in the description. I do know that there are widgets out there that provide sophisticated HTML editor facilities that can be embedded directly into a web page. However, in this course, we want to keep the examples simple so that we can focus on the principles we need to know for creating an ASP.NET Core MVC web application. So at least for now, let's use a basic text area control for this HTML content field. So the last field allows us to enter a YouTube video link. For this example, I'm going to embed an appropriate video from the Gavin Lon channel. So if we navigate to the Introduction to C# video, we can right-click the video screen and select Copy Embed Code, like this. Let's paste the code into a text editor. We only need the URL for this text. Note that the URL must contain the word embed rather than the word watch in order to embed the YouTube video within the appropriate web page. If you simply copy the URL from your browser, the URL will contain the text watch and not embed. So when the URL contains watch instead of embed, this URL cannot be used to embed the relevant video directly into a web page. Now we want the YouTube video to play automatically when the user accesses content that contains the relevant video link. In order to ensure that our video plays automatically, we can add the following query string to the relevant video URL. So let's add $autoplay equals 1 ampersand mute equals 1. The reason we need to add mute equals 1 is so that the volume of the video will be muted when the video automatically plays. The video will not play automatically if this mute query parameter is not included in the relevant query string. This has been intentionally implemented by Google to give the user control over the volume of embedded videos that are automatically played when the relevant web page is accessed. Right, so let's save this content. Great! So we have been automatically navigated back to the list of category items. Notice that to the right of the data for the Introduction to C# category item, the button that was labeled Add Content is now labeled Edit Content. Notice that we have not added content to the other category items, so the relevant buttons here are still marked as Add Content. Great! So in the interests of time, I'm going to fast forward the process of adding content for the other three category items that are members of the C# for Beginners category. Let's add content for the C# data types category item. Let's add the code example for the category item with the title C# datatypes code example. We can copy the code example from the relevant GitHub repository. Notice that I'm leaving the video link field blank here, because the category item only contains text-based content, i.e., in this particular case, a code example. Remember that we saved this category item with its media type field set to article, as opposed to video, because the content for this category item does not contain a video. Let's add content for the C# variables category item. Great, we have now added 4 category items that include content to our C# for Beginners category. So I'm going to fast forward the process of adding 7 more categories, associated category items and associated content. Then we'll look at the user registration process. Before we add the other 7 categories, let's log out of the application and look at the home page from a non-registered user's perspective. Now, if we navigate to the Courses and Articles section, we now have a card within this section that represents our C# for Beginners category. Great! So I'm going to log in as administrator again and create 7 more categories. In the interests of time, I'm going to fast forward this process. So bear with me while I add 7 more categories, related category items, and associated content. So let's create a category with the title Advanced C#. Let's add a few category items and associated content. Let's create a category with the title Azure Cloud. Let's repeat this process for a category named SQL Server for Beginners. Let's repeat this process for a category named Web Design. Let's create a category with the title JavaScript for Beginners. Let's add a category named Node.js. And finally, let's create a category named Full Stack Developer. Excellent. So let's log out of the application. Now, if we navigate to the Courses and Articles section of the homepage, we can see that 8 cards representing the categories we have now saved to the system are now available. So we have experienced the application from a non-registered user's perspective. We have also experienced the application from an administrator's perspective. So let's look at the application from the perspective of a user who has successfully registered to become a member of the TechTree web application. So, to do this, let's first register a fictional person named Bob Jones. Let's click the menu item labeled Register. We can immediately see a modal dialog box presented to us, which contains the relevant registration form. This modal dialog was implemented using a technology named Bootstrap. We'll discuss how this was done in detail at an appropriate point in this course. The username must be a unique email address. So the username will be Bob's email address, which is bob.jones@company.co.uk. Note that this registration form appropriately contains a lot of validation functionality. So for example, if I enter an email address that is not in a correct email address format, an appropriate error message is immediately presented to the user. Note that if I enter an email address that is already saved to the system for another member, a warning message is presented to the user because each member must have a unique username. So, in this instance, where data has not yet been submitted to the server, a warning message is presented to the user, asking the user to enter a unique username. The validation functionality to ensure that a user's username is unique in the system is performed on the server. When the username field loses focus, an asynchronous call is made to the server from the client-side web page. The relevant asynchronous call to the server is done through a technology named AJAX. This stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. AJAX will be explained in more detail at an appropriate point in this course. An error will be flagged if the user attempts to save an email address for the user's username field that already exists for another member in the system. At this stage, a warning message alert is presented to the user. And this warning message can be dismissed by clicking the X at the top right-hand corner of the alert. There is also additional functionality that prevents the user from saving a non-unique username to the system. So as you can see, this form contains significant validation functionality. The technical detail involved in implementing this validation functionality will be explained at an appropriate point in this course. So let's enter valid information for each of the fields in the registration dialog box. Notice that the register button is currently disabled. We must check this checkbox in order to enable the register button. This action indicates that a user has accepted the terms of use and privacy policy. And notice that the register button is now enabled. So let's click the register button, and you can see that Bob Jones is now a registered member of the TechTree web application. Once the registration process is successful, the newly registered member is automatically logged into the system. Notice that the menu items at the top are now different when compared to what the menu items looked like for an administrator or a non-registered member. Bob is an ordinary member and not an administrator, so he does not have access to the admin menu. The other menu items that are presented on the home page for non-registered users, for example, the Contact Us menu item or the About Us menu item, are not available because these menu items are not appropriate in this context. So you can see Bob is presented with the following message on his home page. You currently have not chosen any courses and articles. As discussed, the generic term for courses and articles is category. So in order to consume any content, we need to first choose the courses and articles that we want to consume, i.e. the categories that are of interest to us. So to do this, we need to click the Choose Courses and Articles button. You can see that we are now presented with a list of categories that we added to the system when we were logged on with the admin account. So from a member's perspective, we can now choose the content we wish to consume by checking or unchecking the appropriate categories. So let's check the checkbox next to C# for beginners, and let's also check the checkbox next to Advanced C#. Let's click the Save button to save these categories to Bob's profile. Now we are presented with a collapsible list containing the appropriate categories as the headings. When we click the heading for the category in which we are interested, the category items belonging to the relevant category are presented to us. We can also collapse the category items in which we are currently not interested and show the items in which we are currently interested. So we are able to add and remove categories from our profile by clicking the Choose Courses and Articles button and then checking or unchecking the appropriate checkboxes, positioned to the left of the relevant category title. Let's play with this functionality a little bit. Great! Notice we have a thumbnail picture representing the video media type positioned to the left of the data relating to category items that contain video content. And we have a thumbnail picture of newspapers positioned to the left of category items that only contain text-based content. So this allows the member to know at a glance whether the content contains a video. So let's click on the category item with the title Introduction to C#. And look at that. We now are presented with the content for the Introduction to C# category item. We can see our rendered HTML content that the administrator entered for the HTML content field displayed at the top of the page just below the title field the administrator entered for this content. We can also see the appropriate video that is positioned just below the rendered HTML content is automatically played.
In this tutorial, we'll complete
Great!
a very basic C#.NET application in order to get acquainted with the language. But before we leap into writing code, I'd like to briefly tell you about the technology.
So I'm using Chrome as the browser here. So if we invoke the browser developer tools by pressing F12, we are able to use this button here to view what our content will look like on a number of devices. Here we are viewing the content on an iPhone 10. Notice how responsive this page is. The front end of this application has been coded to be responsive so that the user's experience is as good as when viewing the page on a variety of handheld devices as when this content is viewed on a desktop computer or laptop computer. We'll discuss responsive web design at appropriate points during this course. Let's go back to the home page and view the content for some of the other category items.
We'll develop a basic C# application and focus on the data types used in building the application. We'll look at the differences between value types and reference types, and how the data types that fall within these two main data type categories are stored and managed in memory. By the end
Excellent!
Hi and welcome.
So I want to demonstrate another way that a user is able to register with the application. So let's log out of the application. Let's register a new user, but this time, let's first click on one of the cards. So let's click on the C# for Beginners card, and you can see the registration dialog box is immediately presented to us. So let's register a new member named Sarah Hardy. So let's enter Sarah's information. And click the register button. Great! Notice how when the user registers by clicking one of the cards on the home page, that the category represented by the card is automatically added to the user's profile, so when the newly registered user is automatically logged on, after the registration process has been completed successfully, the card representing the category that the user clicked to invoke the registration dialog box is automatically added to the user's profile. So the user is able to immediately consume the content of interest to the user. Excellent! So I'm going to log out and register 3 more users. So in the interests of time, I'm going to fast forward the registration process for each of these users. Wendy Lake, Dennis Robinson, and lastly, Jennifer Logan. If these names sound made up, that's because they really are. The last thing I'd like to demonstrate is from an admin perspective, so let's log in with the administrator account. Let's click the admin menu and select the Users to Category submenu item. You can see there are 2 sections to this view. At the top, we have a list of categories in a drop-down list. When we select a category from the drop-down list containing all categories currently saved to the system, a list of all members, i.e. people who have registered with the application, is displayed directly below in the Members section of the view. This facility allows an administrator to add a category for a user or delete a category for a user through this user interface. So let's add Azure Cloud to the profile of Sarah Hardy and Bob Jones. So to do this, let's check the appropriate checkboxes next to their names. Let's click the Save button. Let's add Advanced C# to Sarah Hardy's profile. Let's remove C# for Beginners from Sarah Hardy's profile. When we click the Save button, behind the scenes, the inputted data is sent to the server through an asynchronous process. So jQuery is used to implement the asynchronous call to an appropriate MVC action method to carry out the appropriate task that saves the inputted information to the system. The technical details of this will be explained at an appropriate time during this course. I have used the Bootstrap technology and jQuery to output status information to the administrator while the code on the server to save the inputted information to the system is executing. To enhance the user's experience, a progress bar is presented to the user once the user has clicked the Save button. Once the data has been successfully saved to the system, an alert is presented to the user to let the user know that the user's inputted information has been successfully saved to the system. We'll discuss the technical details of how to implement this functionality when we implement the code for this at an appropriate point in this course. So let's log out of the application and log back in as Bob Jones. You can see that Bob Jones now has the Azure Cloud category presented to him on his home page. As you'll recall, the administrator added the Azure Cloud category to Bob's profile. Let's log out of the application and log in as Sarah Hardy. You can see that the C# for Beginners category is no longer available on Sarah's home page, and the Advanced C# category is now available on Sarah's home page. This is because the administrator removed the C# for Beginners category from Sarah's profile and added the Advanced C# category to Sarah's profile. As demonstrated earlier, Sarah and Bob are, however, able to add categories to their profile and also remove categories from their profile by clicking the Choose Courses and Articles button and checking or unchecking the appropriate checkboxes representing the various categories. Once the Save button is clicked, the data is saved to the system. In terms of the underlying database structure, the category entity has a many-to-many relationship with the user entity. An entity named user category is implemented to create a link between the user entity and the category entity. This facilitates the many-to-many relationship between the user entity and the category entity. We'll go into the technical details of this at an appropriate point in this course. And that's it. That is basically an overview of the ASP.NET Core MVC web application that we are going to build in this course. I'm going to go through the creation of this application step by step over a number of videos. So join me as I go through the creation process of this ASP.NET Core MVC web application that we are going to create for TechTree. So it is a fairly basic application, but I guarantee you will learn a lot if you follow this course through to the end. I'm really looking forward to creating the upcoming videos in this course. Gaining this technical knowledge can open many doors in terms of business and career opportunities. So please join me as we learn about the relevant technologies involved: C#, .NET 5, the MVC Model View Controller Framework, Entity Framework Core, Link, SQL Server 2019, ASP.NET Core Identity, JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax, HTML5, Razor, Bootstrap version 4, CSS, responsive web design, and Azure Cloud. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing and please ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It will be greatly appreciated. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. I really enjoy engaging with you in the comments section, so please feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comments section. Thank you and take care.